thank you so much for signing up and joining on a weekend, especially those folks in India who are joining on a long weekend. I appreciate you be there with us today. We at Leadership at Humanity are a bunch of humans, I call that, passionate about bringing back humanity in business leadership. And we do a ton of stuff. We organize senior leadership programs, which we call Leadership at Humanity Leadership Journeys. We run a mentoring program for people across the globe to help and support those who need guidance but don't have access to that through their normal or organizational channels. We run a program with the National Economic University of Vietnam for executive MBA students, where we want to instill the principles of humanity early on in their careers. And we organize these LEH or Leadership at Humanity dialogues, where we invite senior thought leaders or global thought leaders to share about their experiences, their life journeys, and inspire us on how you can build sustainable impact and successful careers while still being very good and successful human beings. So that's a little bit about LEH. Now on some logistics for the program today. So these LEH dialogue sessions are typically about an hour. And it's a dialogue. So there's a reason we call it a dialogue. It's just not me or our guest sharing our information, but we want you to participate and we want you to make this your own conversation. How does that work? We have a dialogue box in the Zoom. You should, during the conversation, bring up any of your questions, anything in your mind, anything you want to know more, you want us to cover in our conversation, please bring it up in the dialogue box. To make sure your mics are on mute in the first half of the conversation at least, so that it's not distracting. But of course, once we get into the Q&A space, we should be able to have you share your questions, your thoughts, your ideas, suggestions, and builds. For me, I'll be your host. I will be engaging our guest and who I will be introducing in a moment to you. But I will be supported by my colleague, Sophia, who's working in the back end along with Tanushree to make sure that all your questions are captured. If for any reasons your tech is not working, we are not, by the way, technology experts by any means. I do have some friends, but by the way, I can see on the screen now, we can lean on them if there's a problem. But hopefully we should have a very smooth session. So with that, let me talk about LEH dialogues a little bit and then introduce our guest for the day. So Leadership at Humanity dialogues, we started almost, I would say, 18 months back, when we thought there was an idea, we should bring or invite global thought leaders to share their perspective on how you can be a successful human being and still build successful careers. So it has a little bit of a negative undertone because I, in my final years in a corporate career, did realize that there was a little bit of a disconnect between how organizations expect their leaders to be in order to be successful or build successful businesses. So I thought we should invite folks who have inspiring life stories, who can give us hope, who can give us inspiration in terms of how do we conduct ourselves as humans and still build very successful lives around us. So that was the idea. This is probably our 11th dialogue. And I'm kind of very proud of the conversations we have had so far in our LEH dialogue sessions. I know some of you or most of you have been joining and supporting us in our Leadership at Humanity dialogues. Now, I personally enjoy these conversations and look forward to these because for me, these conversations are the fuel you need to keep going and doing the things you want to do. But I can tell you, out of all these sessions I've had so far, I'm probably most excited about the conversation today. And our guest today is Rigzen Wangmo. In a moment, you will be hearing from Rigzen, her own life story. I actually saw Rigzen about a year back. I like, by the way, whenever I'm in India, I want to go to Leh. I want to spend more time there. I was visiting Sec Mall. Rigzen probably may not know this, but I was there meeting other folks, and she was teaching a bunch of students under a tree in the open. This was July of 2021. And I just was struck by her simplicity, her ability, the way she was engaging those students, her passion for what she was doing. So I asked a couple of folks, friends I have in Ladakh, about Rigzen, and they shared with me that she basically heads the teaching faculty at SecMol. And then we briefly met, and then cut to, I think, March of this year, when we were there with a group of leaders, because we run these programs. Then I took a group of leaders back to SecMol, and I met Rigzen, and she told me that she has been selected for Harvard. And that was a big moment personally for me. I do know a little bit about Rigzen and her background. I mean, someone who came from a remote region called Ladakh in India, whose mother never went to a school. Her dad dropped out in class 8 to join Indian Army. But they gave her values, and they gave her dreams, and they gave her the courage to go after those dreams. So her story is something which kind of gets me up every day morning and do more, because I know that there is so much you can do. So I have the honor and the privilege of hosting Rigzen as our guest today. We'll hear from Rigzen her story. So the flow would be, we'll have Rigzen share a bit about her background, her story. Then I want to engage with Rigzen and know more about her. So I kind of feel there's so much about her which we don't know. So I'll engage in a conversation, a dialogue with Rigzen. And then towards the end of this session, like always, we will have time for your questions. As I said in the beginning, it's your session. So make sure you ask questions and get inspired from Rigzen. We'll make sure your questions are brought up. Use the dialog box as the questions come to your mind, but of course, we'll have a proper Q&A session. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Rigzen to come. First, very warm welcome, Rigzen, to this forum. And please, share about your story and your journey. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Atul. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining in. I am really excited and privileged and grateful for Atul for inviting me here and having this opportunity to interact with all of you. My name is Rigzen, and I am from a small village called Sumur in Nubra Valley, Leh Ladakh. And before coming here, I was a teacher and educator at an alternative school called Sekmol in Leh Ladakh, which Atul has briefly mentioned about. So now I'm a student here at Huxley, the Harvard Graduate School of Education, pursuing my master's in education, specialization in teaching and teacher leadership. Atul told me that we want to invite you, I was really excited, but I was also nervous, thinking, what contribution can I give and what insights can 28-year-old girl build? But then I thought of the moments that made me wake up, and then being in an education space, regardless of whatever is happening. I thought that I will share about those moments of courage, those moments where I felt that I am in the right space, I am in the education space, and this is where change needs to bring. So I just wanted to just share whatever I have experienced, and maybe learn from all of you, from your experiences, and make it interactive. So I wouldn't be speaking a lot, and I would like to have your insights and your questions, and would interact with you all more in that conversation space or interactive session space. Um, so I grew up in Ladakh as a first generation learner. I've never been like, I have done all my schooling in Ladakh. And when I first went to Delhi, and then I started my journey in Delhi University, pursuing my bachelor and master's, it was it was different for me for sure. But more than that, it was little chaotic in terms of choices. So I would say I was not able to understand what's happening. Daily for me was too fast, and life was too fast. Everything was moving so fast. And I come from a place where things are a little slow, and people would just pause and reflect, and people would think and take time. So it was a huge shift for me just going to Delhi. And then as a result, I just chose my bachelor studies in zoology, I think out of sheer lack of guidance, I would say. And I kept doing that. I didn't really realize that, okay, you can also make choices and change it. I didn't really realize that. So but while I was doing my bachelor and masters, I was not really enjoying, but I was seeking for something else. And that's when started doing a lot of volunteering work, and I started teaching in different areas, right after my college. That was the moment I thought, I want to be in an education space. This is something that I really enjoy and then gives me joy. And that's when I started my education journey, teaching just a bunch of students in a community hall in North Delhi. And it was really fulfilling for me, and I wanted to continue that. But I was doing my master's in zoology, and I was in two minds. Do I have to continue in science, or do I have to use that knowledge that I've gained in my bachelor and master's and teach kids or teach students? So with that thought, I went to the Teach for India, and I got that pedagogical skills, and I also experienced what classroom actually looks like before jumping into the conclusion that this is wrong in the education system. I wanted to experience what it is like to be in the classroom. So when I was working with Teach for India, I was able to see those moments of magic in the classroom, just pure joy of learning and growing together with a bunch of Marathi speaking 35 students in third grade. It was really fulfilling for me. While I was working in Teach for India with those students in Pune, very different from the place I come from, I was I was thinking constantly about what do I do with this knowledge? What do I do with whatever I've learned in Teach for India? How do I take all of them back home? What can I do to contribute what I've learned in Teach for India? So with that thought, I went back right after my fellowship, and I met Mr. Sonam Wangchuk, who some of you might know, and I spoke to him about how I want to use those learnings that I've received in Teach for India and implement in our context in Ladakh. And he asked me to join his team as an academic director. And then since then, I have been working with him. It's been 3 years since I've worked there, and then SecMol became my second home. So for me, I think any education space or any space in general, if you can make that space your home, then you're truly enjoying that space. So for me, it was more like a community that I'm building than a job that I am working in. So that was very important for me. When I joined SecMol, I see kids who are just amazing, different, unique, and with lots of different skills and mindset. And all they needed was some sort of appreciation and acceptance, and that was all that was needed. It was as simple as that. But it's just that I feel sometimes we make things complicated. We make humans more complicated than what they actually. It's just very simple for, simple. So when I met students, I remember meeting student Feroz. He came to me and he was like, he called me Achi. Achi is sister. And he said, I left school many years, back. And then I started working. I didn't even pass my 10th standard. And then I started working menial jobs. I started working in factories. I started working, doing many things that I was not supposed to do at that age, I guess. And he said that I used to spend 12 hours, 15 hours, and then used to get 200 rupees. And suddenly he one day thought that, what if I spend all of this energy and hard work and all this in my studies? Maybe I can get better because I'm anyways putting hard work. So that's what he said. And then he was like, when I thought of that, I remembered that there is a place called Segmol, where they accept students regardless of their educational background. And he came to us and he joined our foundation course last year. Now he wants to become an education reformer, and he has already started his work in Kargil. So he's from Kargil. So, and these are the moments where I feel that I'm in a right place, and this just gives me a joy, however small or big it is. And also there are moments where you see that students are like, they've lost hopes and they feel that they are useless. They think that even they compare their own worth with what they get on the marks or the report card. And so a student, he dropped out of his school when he was in 4th standard because he didn't really get along with the teachers that he was, and they were teaching in while he was in 4th standard. And he had this opinion that teachers are bad. So he had really weird, he had very different opinions about school and teachers in general. So that was a time when I used to think, how do we change that narrative, or how do we change his perspective, not just by saying, but also by showing that how can it look different as well, right? So while he was in foundation, we started with teaching him alphabets. And now, when I was, before coming here, he gave a presentation like about his responsibility on the in campus on his own. And he got me a card and my pictures on it, and you are the best teacher. And that those are the moments I feel that um, just building that community of learning along with the students is very essential. And these are the things that I've learned during my journey, and I hold onto that, and I really appreciate that. And I feel that I'm really privileged that I get to be in a space, in an education space, where I get to feel all of this. And yeah, but other than that, I am a passionate reader. I love to read books. And people ask me, what do you do apart from, teaching and all of that? And like, I read. And then everyone's like, that's pretty similar to what you do in education space. But still, yeah, I really like to read. And because of my love for books, we started literary society, Ladakh Literary Society in Ladakh. And now we have started a book club in Harvard too, and I'm really excited for that. So that's pretty much about me. I'm sure you all would have questions. I would love to interact and have interactive sessions in the end. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, that was a very compelling introduction, Rigzen. And you shared it in a very imitable way, very unique Rigzen way. So thank you for sharing and inspiring us. You made a comment which really stuck with me, and it's also reflected every time I go to Leh and I meet people like yourself, which is life is pretty simple, and I think we make it complicated. Those of you who don't know much about SecMol, which Rigzen was sharing, it's a school which accepts 10th grade failures and gives them an opportunity to be successful in life. How cool is that? I mean, we talk about education, but this is a real education with purpose of transforming lives of people who probably have lost hope, and they come to this place and get something which will enable them to build their lives. So it's a huge inspiration. Rigzen, thanks so much. So we will get into a conversation, and I'm going to ask you some questions. Feel free to skip or answer or ask clarifying questions. So this is not structured to that extent, but I'm looking forward to the dialogue. Also, I will request our audience to continue putting their questions in the dialogue box so that we make it a broader conversation. So my first question is, Rigzen, you kind of probably simplified your journey in many ways. I'm going to ask you, what have been your inspirations or early influences in life, which made you actually dream big and go after those dreams?
Yeah, there are certainly many people who have influenced me and my life. Many people who like just starting from growing up in a household where there is a climate of warmth and positivity, and also living in a community in Ladakh which fosters that positivity. I think I derive my inspiration from spaces more than people. So for me, spaces hold a lot of importance in my life, be it my classroom in Teach for India, where I see pure joy in learning and growing together, be it SecMol, where I get to observe fun engagement, learning going hand in hand, or be it just Harvard, where I get to be with a community of practice, a community of people with a shared vision of making a world a better place. So I think my inspiration would be places or spaces that I've been in, and that have inspired me to do better. That would be my point of inspiration, I guess.
That's wonderful, Rigzen. Some of this I can, by the way, connect with. When you talk about SecMol, you talk about Ladakh. I think there's a lot in there that inspires you and is you. So, what you're doing, as I said, you make it sound simple, but these are big, audacious dreams you went after. Tell me, when you were a child, when you were growing up in the Nubra Valley, what dreams you had in mind, what you wanted to be?
To be honest, Atul, growing up, there was dearth of information, I would say. As a first generation learner, I had to really figure out what's happening in the world, and there were no means to figure out that, I would say. It just you would just want to become whatever you see see others doing, or it's just that's the only point of contact or point of reference that you have. I wasn't space where I see a lot of people doing different things. I just see people doing just what like society and everyone's just like going after. So there was a dearth of information, I would say, but deep inside I always had this feeling that I want to do something for the community. That was always there. I don't know why, but it was always there for me. So I think that was the driving force for me to just work wherever I work, in whatever capacity I work. I always wanted to do something for the community, and maybe within the community with the people in the community. That was my thought. And so I always went after that. My dream just changed from, whatever I see. It was very, very, whatever I see, uh, maybe in the television, or whatever I hear, that was the only point of reference that I had. I didn't have anyone doing, going to school, or I had no one in my family who have ever done, who have ever gone to school or achieved something that, in a very educational space or whatever. But that's why I didn't really had lots of references. But I still feel that that sense of giving back to the community was always there. And I just like went after that, I guess.
I think that's great, Rigzen. And by the way, many times we think there would be these very defining one or two dreams which we go after, but the dreams evolve, as you rightly said. As you get more awareness, more information, and then you continue to look for what else is possible.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. We've got some interesting questions also coming up in the dialogue box. I'm going to mix it. I have a ton of questions for you, but I'm going to mix it a little bit. And I'm going to request Manoj, if you can come off mute and actually ask your questions yourself.
Yes, sure, Atul. Am I audible?
Yes, very clearly.
The question which I have for Rigzen is Delhi University or Teach for India. Which one has been a turning point in your life as far as choosing career in learning space is concerned?
Thank you so much for the question. I think both spaces had its, I drew learnings from both the spaces, but for me, in Delhi University, I realized what I don't want. And in Teach for India, I realized what I want. So that was very important for me to understand what I don't want, so that I don't pursue something that I really don't enjoy. So that also importance, that's also a big learning for me during my time in Delhi University. So I think I would say in both spaces I learned different aspects which led me to choose education as a career, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Rigzen. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, Manoj. And Rigzen, next. I'm going to ask one question for myself, and that's about the hurdles. I, by the way, also grew up in a very small town and then moved to a bigger place. And then you don't realize there are, situations which you have to deal with. Mm-hmm. You got to learn in those moments and make choices and decisions. So I'm keen to understand from you, what are the hurdles early on in your life which came in the way of going after what you wanted to do in that moment? Mm-hmm. And how did you overcome those hurdles?
I think the major challenges or hurdles would not be something physical, but just my understanding of world. Just like when you're thrown out in the ocean, like for me it was more like thrown out in the ocean when I went to Delhi alone as a first generation learner. My parents didn't even know what course am I going to choose. They were very supportive, but they don't know about all of this. So for me it was a challenge, I would say, just like going alone. And right after your 12th standard is like when you don't really have a very broader sense of what happens in the world and everything. And just navigating my way through all of this and making choices without having a proper guidance, I would say. Because when I was, now I have a sister, but then she gets to ask me, what can we do? Like I get to guide her. But for me, there was, I would say, not many people. There were not many people who would, have like who I can go and ask. So just making those informed choices on my own sometimes could come with a lot of self-doubt, lack of information, just lack of support, and sometimes lack of resources. And also having to thrive into that, that was, I think, hurdles. But in the end, I believe that if you have a clear purpose, if you know, like, why are you doing what you are doing, if you are clear about that, then I think it becomes easier to navigate those, and just to have the right mindset. And when you're dealing with the hurdles is, I think, yeah, it is important, I guess.
That's great, Rigzen. So specifically, I can relate to what you just said. When you're making choices, not having enough support or data points or people who can be a sounding board or who can guide you, especially being the older child in the family. How did you deal with it? So when you didn't have people to go to, you didn't have someone guiding you, advising you, what enabled the choices you made in your life?
I would say every time I was, on the verge of giving up, on the verge of, I was like, this is not making sense, I'm not able to understand what's happening, I would always go back to the why question. I mean, that's how I always function. I think even here in Harvard, when you have so many things happening at the same time, and you have so many distractions in terms of, there are many things that that you can do, and I always go back to the questions why. So always asking those self-reflective questions, like, why do you want to do this? If you're facing challenges, why are you facing those challenges? Can we go to the root cause analysis, and then can we figure out what's happening? Is there a way? If then there's a way, then you need not worry, I guess. And so maybe just going back to that why question all the time and every day is, yeah, has helped me a lot. I always used to think, why, Rigzen? Why do you want to go, continue doing that? Then I would have the answer that because I want to serve the children of Ladakh. Then that would give me a purpose to just keep going. And that was, I think, the driving force.
It's a great response. Having the larger purpose clear makes things sometimes more easier for you to make those choices.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So next, I'm going to go again back to a question from our participants. So Sangeet Shrikant, if you can come off mute and bring up your question, please.
Sure. Hi, Rigzen.
Hi, Sangeet.
Very inspiring to listen to your story. This is one of many times I've listened this from you, but it's always inspiring. I loved when you said that your workplace is your second home. So with that in mind, what was your vision that inspired you to come to Harvard? I'm sure you wanted to bring something back with you at the end of your goal or when you graduate. So what are you expecting to bring back in terms of changes, skill sets, and other aspects to SECMOL? I hope I'm pronouncing that right, your school back home. And what changes do you envision in the next couple of years based on what you've seen there and based on your exposure to anything at all here in the last 2 months?
Thank you so much for the question. When I was in SECMOL, I'm always working with students, and they would always tell me what's happening. When we have English class or any class, they would ask me, it's very difficult for us to understand. And then we would go back to, why is it difficult for us to understand, like a simple text. And then everyone will indicate to, because we don't have the foundations, or because we don't have the strong basic. Everyone would go back to that. And then I thought that we are just trying to fix the problem, or just like doing the patchwork, we're just trying to, fix something. and then let it go, and not fixing the real problem, which is the foundation or the basic education. And that's what I realized, and I experienced it while I was in Sigmol, and while I was working with different teachers within Ladakh, that elementary school systems, you need to bring changes in elementary school system. And I got the answer why, because I see the outcomes. So that's why I got so interested in this course, teaching and teacher leadership, where you get to choose your own courses, you get to tailor your own programs. So here I can work with language and literacy for students who don't speak English as their first language, and I get to work with teachers here, and I get to learn with them, work with them. So I thought that while studying in Harvard, I would get those leadership skills and insights on early education, elementary education system, and some practices which are working really well in the US, and some practices that I can contribute and share about what's working well in the Himalayas. So I came here for a shared space of sharing my own knowledge, and also getting understanding nuances and practices that are successfully implemented in the US, so that I can contextualize and implement those mindset and skills and knowledge in Ladakh.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful answer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sangeet, and thanks, Rigzen. What a great answer or response, Rigzen. So I'm going to take probably another question. Now, this time, we have a couple of our team members who are keen to know more about you. So I'm going to request Afshin. Afshin, please come off mute and bring up your question.
Hi, Rigzen. I'm so happy to meet you, and thank you, Atul, for setting up this experience. What a wonderful way to spend a Saturday, and so enriching, and I'm so inspired, and so I really appreciate, Rigzen, all your sharing. And I really, one thing that I've been asking myself while I'm listening to you talk is how committed you are to taking all the gifts that you are collecting right now and bringing them back to your community. And that got me thinking, what are your hopes for the children in Ladakh when you return? What are your hopes for them?
Thank you so much for the question, and thank you. I think that given a right resource, or given a chance, or given that space and opportunity, anyone can just bloom. So that's something that I always believe, that a child would not, it's not always inherently they're not uninterested. It's the environment or the spaces that we create which decides if the children gets to, if children are engaged, or if they are enjoying, or if they are learning. So I hope that the children in Ladakh, I feel that we create those spaces. It could be in school, it could be in house, in a home, or it could be in a community center, or it could be anywhere, regardless. Because I feel that it's not necessary that you have learning when you are in the classroom. What if there is no classroom? I have been asking this question when I came here. We have courses where we, learn about how to do these things in the classroom, how to do that things in the classroom. I always come back to that question. What if there is no classroom? What happens? Does learning stop there? No. But how do we then work on that if there's no classroom? What happens if people don't go to school? Should I consider them not educated? Or so how about we make learning not confined to classroom, and learning just maybe taking village as a lab, or as an institution of learning. So I feel that the children of Ladakh they have a lot of resources in terms of indigenous knowledge and villages, very pure and very organic settings, where you don't really have to have those fancy equipments, but you still get to learn a lot. So I want to create those spaces and facilitate those spaces for children to learn in their own settings, not having to change a lot. So that's my hope. I hope I have answered your question. Please let me know.
In so many ways, you just turned the world upside down in terms of how I relate to learning. And I do learning for grown-ups and you do learning for kids. And I've just realized, what if we started looking at learning not limited to whichever context we have been limiting it to, and started, utilizing or expanding the spaces to other areas as well. I love that. It's created a lot of inspiration for me. So thank you, Rigzen. Just a great response.
Thank you, Afshin. Thank you, Rigzen. I'll take another question from our team member in Ed, and that's from Bhaskar. Bhaskar, you can come off mute and share your question.
Hello, Rigzen. For somebody of your age, you are indeed far ahead in terms of your learning and realization of your dreams. My question is, given your comment that when you first came to Delhi University, you realized that the pace of life is very different from what you were used to in Ladakh. So for tens of millions of children in rural India, not only in Ladakh, but across all Indian states, what is it that they need to, what is the missing link that somebody in your position can give them to bridge the gap between where you are today and where somebody in a village who is maybe 10 years old would be?
Thank you so much. Thank you for your question. So when I got into Harvard, I kept thinking, what made me make this choice? What encouraged me? Was it from a video that I've seen, or was it from what made me make this, even have the courage to even apply for this institute, apply to this institution? Then I always think that I see people like me who have a similar background like me, who have first generation people whose parents never went to school, or people who have passion. And then I draw some similarities. So I think seeing similar faces, I would never even have that courage if someone from a much more different background could be privileged and could have different resources and could have guide or all the resources that needs to get here. I might not even have the courage to do the same thing, because then I will always think about, okay, he or she has a different source of resources. Or so I believe that when people in the villages, when children in the villages, they look for people with a similar background, and when they can resonate, then I feel that they get the courage to even try. So I believe that what I could do is that I could be that person where I say that, look, I am here. I don't know if it's a great thing or not, but you can also do that, because, like, if I can do it, then maybe you can also do it. So having that community of, okay, we're all in this together, but see, if I can do it, I also come from the same background, from the village, then maybe we all can do it. So having that showing it to the people that the same, it's just always that we get to hear, or we get to listen to, we get to watch people who are very different from our backgrounds. So having that resonance with people with a similar background helps in just having that little courage to even apply or even try out something new.
Brilliant.
Wonderful. Thanks, Bhaskar. Great question. Thanks,
Thank you.
Rigzen. So maybe a little lighter question. Let me ask Rigzen about about the change. So from Nubra Valley to Boston in last 2 months, what are the big adjustments or shifts or changes you have to make in the normal day-to-day life?
Yeah, it has been, I would say, very different, of course, but it has also made me very self-reflective in many ways, because whenever I see problems or whenever I'm overwhelmed by the amount of information that we get on a daily basis and the amount of things we get to do here, I always go back to my own self, and then it's like, I need to first figure out what's happening inside, and then I can navigate what's happening outside. But in terms of adjustment, I would say there have been many things that I'm trying to do, like keeping that balance, I think, making sure that you keep up with everything while you are keeping that balance. So for me, that's that just like understanding that time and then space and what to do when, and also finding that balance, work and social and my own self-care. These are the little things that I have been working on. Yeah, but more than anything, I came to realize that Harvard, being here, I'm living two journey, and both of them are important. But for me, my internal journey is that I give more priority to, and external journey, I believe that when I'm sorted I'm sorted with my internal journey, then I think external things would fall in place. So I'm working on my internal journey here in Harvard.
Are you really 28, Rigzen? Your responses really kind of go at least 3 or 4 levels deeper for me, just to understand and connect. So it's so beautiful, by the way, just listening to you. And I wish we could, or I could one day reflect like you. So it's wonderful. I'm going to go back to the audience. I know that Prashant has a few questions. Prashant, over to you.
Hello, Rigzen. Such a pleasure to connect with you. You can hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. Wonderful connecting with you, and love from Singapore. We, as an audience, are very excited about seeing how you have progressed all the way to Harvard. A few simple questions that come to our minds. Number one, I know you have a higher purpose. You went there, you're seeing a new world, new exciting things happening, so much to learn. And given your age, where you have a long, long way to go, and learning is continuous. Under those circumstances, do you get torn between, oh, I must continue to see the world and learn and do things, versus, oh, now it's time for me to come back and give back and to hold to my promise of what I had promised in my village? Do you get torn between these two things? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think earlier I used to think that it is my responsibility to fix everything. That is definitely not the way I should be looking at things. But earlier I used to have that, like, I don't know why, but I always used to think if something is wrong, especially in education, I feel that this is my personal responsibility to fix things. And I'm not going by that. I feel that I could just be a catalyst, like I could just be that person who can facilitate things and try to make things better. But now I have come to a realization that you can live your purpose. So while you're living your purpose, you can enjoy. So for me, it's like just having those conversations around education also drives me happy, so that's my way of chilling. Just living your purpose makes me more content in terms of, I'm also living my life to the fullest, but also achieving something while I'm doing that. So I think I have come to that realization that you need not have a dream or a purpose there, and then having to work and then, like reach there, but you can just leave your purpose on the way or something. I mean, if that makes sense.
It makes tremendous sense to me. I completely connect with what you said. It is the here and now. And as you connect to that here and now, that is what you are doing. Well said. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks. Great question, Prashant. Thanks, Rigzen. Great response. So it's actually another one. It's not a question, but a comment, but it's a great comment. So I'm going to ask my friend Keith to come off mute and share his perspective. Keith? Is Keith here online? Okay, so I'm going to read Keith's comment. I can see him, but I think he's not able to come off mute. So Keith is saying he loved the authenticity and simplicity of how you've made choices in your life. Clearly, your higher purpose has driven your impact. So, and I can't disagree with him. I think everything he's saying, and you shared with us, Rigzen, just reaffirms the fact that if you're going after a higher purpose, a lot of things become clearer in life. So when you're looking at a bigger purpose, a lot of these day-to-day challenges, hurdles, etc., choices become much more easier. I'm going to ask my next question, which is about your next phase of the journey. So you did touch upon, going back and giving back to the society, but in more concrete terms, Rigzen, next phase, say next 5-10 years, what does that look like?
I certainly want to continue what I do. I want to teach, I want to work with the children, and that's definitely something that I don't want to stop. And in a long run, my area of interest is working and improving the elementary education system in Ladakh. So that's my higher goal, and providing support to teachers in Ladakh. That's two things that I really I feel strong for, and I want to work on. And it could be in any spaces, from starting my own pilot project in Sumur, where I can get to implement few practices that I've learned here, or to maybe working with government in consulting, or maybe working with institutions like Hayal or Sekmol, or there are many institutions who are doing they're doing great in education. So maybe working in collaboration with them. So in the future, I would certainly want to work on elementary education system and teacher support in Ladakh.
That's great, Rigzen. And by the way, as we, of course, spoke, I was there about 10-15 days back, and there are a lot of people, a lot of kids who are looking up to you. They're excited about your journey. They're excited about the fact that what you will bring back to that society. So a lot of hopes out there, and of course, a lot of hands cheering for you in Ladakh right now. So my next question is, a lot of us grow up with dreams, and I again go back to my own story. You have a lot of ideas, you want to do a lot of things in life, but then you start restricting yourself. You start looking at what is not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Start to kind of tone down or compromise some of your aspirations and settle for something which is probably suboptimal, not at a level where you started. Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for those people who have dreams but feel restricted to chase or go after those dreams?
So I have been thinking about this lately. This could also help others to reflect. I always go with this question: is this my most potential for growth? And is this my most highest potential for growth? So that question always helps me to then look for things that could improve, and just having that growth mindset, I would say. um, if you feel that you have earned enough or you have done enough, then I think that's the day when then you'll stop learning. So for me, I think I'm no one to give advice, but I would say just thinking about, is this your most potential? Is this where you can, like, is this the most potential? Is this your most potential for growth? And just having that growth mindset, and just asking, can I go beyond this? Can we do better? Or maybe it's just acknowledging the fact that we are learning, and be a lifelong learner, I would say. Not necessarily in your own field, but also be open to learning in different fields and learning from others in different fields. That's what I have been learning and practicing here. And I also I have been thinking, this may not be very related to your question, but when I go from my house to my school, it's a 12 minutes walk, and I always record myself. I don't get time to write, so I record myself. One day I was thinking about, because we were served cookies the other day, the free cookies for graduate school students. And I was thinking about, everyone is here to grab that cookies, and in real life also everyone is here to grab something. So for my question is, do I really need that cookie, or am I really hungry, or are we taking those cookies just because everyone is picking it up, or just because it's free in my context? So just to think about, why are you picking those cookies? Are you really hungry? And if you're hungry, then you should definitely pick those cookies. And if you're not, but just because you are neighbors or your relatives or everyone's picking that cookie, you need not necessarily pick that cookie. So that was, something I was thinking lately.
It's amazing, Rigzen. And you know what? I'm going to steal your cookie story with pride for my next LEH leadership journey program. And I'll separately sort out the copyright bit with you. Okay, so my last question I'm going to offer to Keith. No, not sorry. I'm going to offer to Pawan. Pawan, over to you.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Rigzen, thanks so much. I'm kicking myself because I was 10 minutes late for the call, and I'm wondering what I missed, because it's so beautiful just to hear you and your thought process. I wanted to take you back when you were a teenager, a normal teenager, 13, 14 years old. There are a lot of temptations, social media, sports, boys, having fun. How did you deal with those temptations while you were growing up to be what you are today?
Thank you so much for your question. I was like literally taken back to those times when I lived in a boarding school. I went to a government school, JNV, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, if any one of you know of that. That's a government free school or public school for students in Ladakh. So we used to live in a dorm with 30 people, or just like, I don't quite remember how I dealt, because maybe I was not really reflecting on those moments, I guess. But when I think of it, I think I try to build on my interest. Reading was always been my interest, even during that time. So maybe, when I was building on my interest, most of the things became secondary, I guess. So for me, it was more like when when I had nothing to do, or maybe when it's very likely that I would get distracted. I would maybe go back to my passion, or what I love to do, reading, and then I would read, and that's how I think it just stayed with me, the reading bit. And that also made me, I think, just have a better worldview of, what others are feeling, how people are behaving, how they behave, or anything that you have to learn. I've learned, I think, through books in the initial days, I guess.
Awesome.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thanks. I know we are over time, but I have one last connected question. So we have, by the way, a lot of questions, Rigzen, coming up, but my own list is like just halfway through. So I'm going to write it down and come back to you, and then we'll go back to our audience. But there's a connected question from Sam Sir. Sam, over to you.
Hi, Rigzen. What a pleasure. I mean, it's a fantastic gift that Atul brought to me, and it is a fantastic gift that you brought to my life. And I've never even met you before, but I was wondering, what are you reading? It's clearly reading drives you. So what are you reading now?
So I have a problem, I would say, that I read multiple books in a day. So I would read Emily Dickinson's poetry book, in the night, and then I would go for Pedagogy of the Oppressed during the day. Whenever I find time, I just read many books altogether. That's why, like, my table has like many books. So I was also reading letters to Singapore schools. So there have been I think a visit from Cambridge. A bunch of teachers went to Singapore. So there is a compilation of reflection on what they learned from schools in Singapore. So I'm also reading that. And so I have I don't know, I read multiple books at at different time. I think it depends on my, mental phase. Sometimes I read poems, and I'm reading 3 books at the moment. The Letter, or Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and I'm also reading a poetry by Emily Dickinson.
Thank you. Fantastic stuff. I must try that. I find it hard to read one thing at a time. I mean, it clearly shows your mental engagement.
That's a good
Thank
thing,
you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I want to go on and on, Rigzen, but I know it's a Saturday and we are on time or over time. But what a wonderful session! I mean, thanks so much for giving us inspiration and giving us hope. I think there's so much out there in the world. We just need to dream big, have a good heart, a good pair of hands. I'm kind of talking about the second wall credo because it's fresh in my head, and a sharp head. And with that, I think we can make our dreams come true and create value for so many other people who would benefit from who you are. It's been one of the most inspirational sessions for LEH. A lot to take back and a lot to absorb personally for me. But I have this unique advantage. I can reach out to any time and I can set up more conversations with you. I want to thank everyone who joined on a weekend. To make these conversations, these dialogues, as enriching as these are, it wouldn't be possible without the kind of audience we have. Big thanks to my colleague Sophia to help me set this up and do everything in the background to make sure that this lands well. Thank you very much. We look forward to the next dialogue and we'll let you know when we are ready. Thank you so much. Have a nice week.